The morning began like any normal day in the quiet neighborhood of Willow Creek. Birds were singing, sunlight was soft, and the street looked peaceful. But inside one small house, everything was about to change. Sarah, a tired but strong mother, stepped out of the front door holding a cup of warm coffee. She expected to see her son's special medical wheelchair waiting on the porch, right where she left it the night before. Instead, she froze. The space where the wheelchair always stood was completely empty. For a moment, her mind went blank. She blinked, thinking maybe she was still half asleep or maybe she rolled it inside and forgot. But no, she never forgot something so important. Not when her 8-year-old son Eli depended on that wheelchair for every basic movement. The wheelchair wasn't just any equipment. It was a custom medical wheelchair worth $12,000, designed for Eli's fragile muscles and breathing support. Without it, he could barely move around safely. Her heart began to race. Sarah quickly walked down the porch steps, looking left and right. Nothing. She ran to the garage. Still nothing. She searched the driveway, the ramp, the side of the house, even though she knew it made no sense. A wheelchair doesn't just roll away. Fear started crawling up her spine. Eli, she called from outside, her voice shaking. Did anyone come last night? Did you hear anything? Eli, still inside the house, called back weakly. No, Mom. I didn't hear anything. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but her mind was spinning. Who would take a disabled child's medical chair? Why would anyone even touch something so clearly important? She rushed back inside, grabbed her phone, and opened the security camera app. Her fingers trembled so much she almost dropped the phone. The footage from last night began to load slowly, second by second, like a cruel test of her patience. And then she saw it. A shadowy figure appeared at the edge of the camera frame at around 2:43 a.m. The figure moved slowly, almost confidently, as if they had been planning this for a long time. The porch light caught the face for a moment and Sarah's breath caught in her throat. It was a woman wearing dark sunglasses in the middle of the night, carrying a clipboard under her arm. Her hair was tied tightly, and her mouth was set in a straight, almost angry line. It was Karen. The same Karen who spent every day walking around the neighborhood pretending she owned the place. The same Karen who called herself the strict HOA rule enforcer. The same Karen who complained about everything: the toy bikes on driveways, lawn grass too long, holiday lights too bright, and even children making too much noise. But this was different. This wasn't a complaint. This was a crime. The video showed Karen stepping onto Sarah's porch, looking straight at the wheelchair with disgust. She lifted her clipboard, muttered something nobody could hear, and then bent down to grab the wheelchair. It took effort, but she dragged it slowly down the porch steps. Her expression was cold, almost emotionless. Once she reached the street, she looked directly into the security camera for 3 long seconds. As if she knew she was being recorded. As if she didn't care. Then she walked off with the wheelchair, disappearing into the darkness. Sarah replayed the video 5 times, each time hoping she was wrong. But she wasn't. The chair was gone. And Karen was the one who took it. Her hands shook with anger, fear, and confusion. She knew Karen disliked the wheelchair ramp outside her house. Karen claimed it ruined the neighborhood look. She even sent warning letters telling Sarah to remove it, despite knowing Eli needed it to survive daily life. But stealing? Stealing medical equipment from a disabled child? That was something Sarah never imagined. She grabbed her jacket, hurried outside, and looked around once more, hoping the wheelchair would magically appear. Neighbors walked their dogs, kids rode their bikes, everyone seemed unaware of the nightmare happening right in front of them. Sarah's eyes filled with tears she tried hard to hold back. How could she do this? Why, she whispered to herself. The sun climbed higher, but the cold feeling in her chest only grew heavier. She walked slowly back to the porch, sat on the bottom step, and pressed her hands to her face. The truth hit her harder each minute. Without that chair, Eli couldn't go to school. He couldn't leave the house safely. He couldn't even move around freely inside without support. This wasn't just an object stolen, this was Eli's independence, his lifeline. She took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. No. She couldn't sit and cry. She had to protect her son. Sarah stood up, turned toward the street, and stared at the row of houses. Everything looked normal, but now, every shadow felt dangerous, every silence felt heavy. Somewhere in this peaceful neighborhood, a stolen medical wheelchair was hidden. And the woman who took it acted like she had the right. Sarah clenched her fists. If Karen thought she could hide behind HOA rules, she was wrong. Very wrong. The scene fades with Sarah standing alone on her porch, the empty space beside her a painful reminder of what had been taken. The camera slowly zooms in on her worried eyes as she whispers. Karen, what have you done? The suspense grows. The mystery deepens. And the real battle is about to begin. The neighborhood of Willow Creek looked peaceful from the outside, but anyone who lived there knew one truth: if something annoyed Karen, the whole community felt it. And today, her obsession was about to be exposed in a way no one expected. After discovering the stolen wheelchair, Sarah kept pacing her living room, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She knew Karen had always been difficult, but she never believed Karen could cross a line this big. As Sarah replayed the security footage over and over, one question kept echoing in her mind. Why would Karen do this? To understand that, you had to understand Karen. Karen's reputation. Karen wasn't just an HOA board member. She acted like the entire neighborhood was her personal kingdom. She carried a clipboard everywhere, scribbling notes about violations no one else even noticed. If someone's lawn grass grew half an inch too tall, she left a warning. If a kid left a bicycle in the driveway, she knocked on the door to deliver a lecture. If trash bins were out 2 minutes early, she sent official emails. But there was something deeper behind her behavior. Something darker. People often whispered that Karen seemed to enjoy control too much. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood, she was controlling it out of fear, power, and ego. The rules gave her authority, and authority made her feel important. Her target, Sarah and Eli. Sarah had always been polite to Karen, even when Karen complained about the wheelchair ramp. The ramp was medically necessary for Eli, but Karen claimed it looked ugly and brought down house values. Every month, Karen sent a new complaint letter. The ramp does not match neighborhood style. Medical equipment should be stored out of sight. Wheelchair is visible from the street, violation of community image. Most neighbors ignored her warnings. But Karen didn't ignore them. She escalated. She started circling Sarah's home more often, sometimes at 6 a.m., sometimes at 10 p.m. She walked slowly, writing notes, taking pictures, whispering to herself. Eli once asked, "Mom, why does that lady keep staring at our house?" Sarah didn't know what to say. How do you explain to a disabled child that some people care more about rules than kindness? Karen's belief: I fix problems. In Karen's mind, everything she did was saving the neighborhood. She believed. She kept the streets clean. She kept houses perfect. She kept order where others failed. But this time, her sense of power twisted into something unhealthy. She convinced herself that Eli's wheelchair was trash on display. She convinced herself that the ramp was breaking HOA rules. And worst of all, she convinced herself that taking the wheelchair was the right thing to do. Not one neighbor agreed. But Karen didn't ask for approval, she took action based on her own judgment. Sarah connects the dots. As Sarah sat at the kitchen table, she spread Karen's old HOA letters in front of her. At first, they looked like simple warnings. But now, after seeing the video, they felt like clues in a criminal story. Letter 1. Remove the ramp or face fines. Letter 2. Wheelchair must be hidden from street view at all times. Letter 3. Medical devices outside the home are against HOA-style guidelines. Sarah felt chills. Karen wasn't annoyed. Karen was building a case. A case to justify taking what didn't belong to her. Suddenly, Sarah remembered something even stranger. A month ago, Eli's small portable medical lift went missing. She thought she misplaced it. Weeks before that, his backup oxygen tank disappeared for 2 days and suddenly reappeared outside. She had assumed she forgot where she kept it. Now everything made sense. It wasn't forgetfulness. It wasn't misplacing. Someone had been stealing small items for weeks, testing boundaries, seeing how far they could go. That someone was Karen. Karen's secret conversations. Neighbors often heard Karen speaking loudly during her walks. She talked on the phone about community standards, violators, and how she alone keeps the neighborhood safe. One neighbor once overheard her saying, "If they don't follow rules, I will make them. I don't care who they are." Some thought she was joking. Some thought she was just dramatic. But nobody imagined she would target a disabled child. Karen believed rules were more important than people. And now she believed she was the hero of this story. A neighborhood divided. As word spread that Sarah's wheelchair was stolen, neighbors started whispering. Some stood quietly on their porches, looking at Sarah with sympathy and worry. Others looked at Karen's house with suspicion. Everyone knew Karen loved rules. But stealing medical equipment? That was beyond anything they imagined. Some neighbors approached Sarah's yard but didn't know what to say. How do you comfort a mother whose child's lifeline has been taken? A woman named Lisa finally walked up and whispered, "Sarah, you're not crazy for thinking Karen did this. She has been acting strange for months." Sarah nodded, her jaw tight, her eyes burning with frustration. The community tension grew like a storm cloud ready to burst. Karen walks the street like nothing happened. Later that day, Karen walked proudly down the street with her usual clipboard and sunglasses. While everyone stared, she behaved as if she had done nothing wrong. She waved at a few people, ignoring their shocked expressions. At one point, she even smiled at Sarah's house. A slow, controlled smile. As if she believed she won. As if she believed she had fixed a rule violation. Sarah watched from the window with anger mixing with confusion. What kind of person steals from a sick child and then walks around like a hero? There was only one explanation. Karen truly believed the rules gave her power to do anything. Even illegal things. Even cruel things. But she had made one mistake. She underestimated a mother's strength. And Sarah was ready to fight back. Sarah stood at her window, watching Karen walk down the street with her usual powerful, almost arrogant stride. The sun reflected off Karen's sunglasses, making her look like some kind of neighborhood security officer, except she wasn't protecting anyone. She was hurting them. Sarah felt something shift inside her. Fear turned into determination. Worry turned into fire. Eli's wheelchair was not just metal and wheels. It was his freedom. His legs. His chance to move, to live a somewhat normal childhood. No rule, no HOA guideline, no angry woman had the right to take that away. She turned to Eli, who sat quietly on the couch, hugging a stuffed dinosaur. His small voice broke her heart. "Mom, when will I get my chair back? I can't go anywhere." Sarah's throat tightened. She couldn't let him see her fear. So she bent down, kissed his forehead, and said softly, "I'm going to fix this, sweetheart. I promise." She grabbed her phone, stepped outside, and walked straight toward Karen's house, a small, perfectly trimmed, perfectly decorated home that looked more like a museum than a place where a living person stayed. Every step she took felt heavier, like she was moving through a storm. But she didn't stop. When she reached the porch, she paused. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear it. She took a deep breath, and knocked. The door opened slowly. Karen appeared, holding her clipboard like always. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked prepared. "Yes?" Karen asked, voice flat. "Can I help you with something?" Sarah forced herself to stay calm. "Karen, where is my son's wheelchair?" "I know you took it. I saw the camera." Karen didn't blink. Didn't look guilty. didn't even look confused. Instead, she tilted her head slightly and said, "You mean the violation?" "Yes, I removed it." Removed. As if she had taken out a trash bin. Not a child's life support tool. Sarah's voice cracked. "That wheelchair is for a disabled child. Why would you think you can just take it?" Karen sighed dramatically, as if she were tired of explaining the obvious. "You don't understand, Sarah," she said, folding her arms. "Rules matter here. This neighborhood has standards. We can't let medical equipment lie around like yard decorations." Sarah stared at her in shock. "You stole from a sick child and you're talking about decorations?" Karen lifted her chin proudly. "I didn't steal. I enforced community order. Someone has to do it. And since your house continues to lower neighborhood appearance, action was required." Sarah took one step closer. "Give it back." Karen's smile widened, the fake, tight-lipped smile she used during HOA meetings. "I'm afraid I can't do that. It's being held until the HOA decides the proper action. That equipment costs $12,000. Sarah shouted. "My son can't even move without it." Karen raised one eyebrow. "Maybe you should have thought about that before breaking rules." Sarah felt tears sting her eyes, but she wiped them away. She wasn't going to break in front of this woman. Not today. Then something changed in Karen's expression. A flicker, a small, quick tightening of her jaw. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was pride. She liked this. She enjoyed the power. That realization made Sarah's stomach twist. "You think you're doing something right," Sarah whispered. "But you're hurting people. You're hurting a child." Karen shrugged. "Children grow stronger when they adapt. Maybe this will teach him something." Sarah felt her hands ball into fists, but she stayed in control. She wouldn't give Karen the satisfaction of seeing her break. Instead, she pulled her phone from her pocket. "Karen," she said firmly, "this is illegal. I have video proof. I'm giving you one last chance to return the wheelchair before I call the police." For the first time, Karen's smile faded just slightly. A small crack in her confidence. But then she straightened, lifted her chin, and said, "Call them. I have nothing to hide. I am following HOA rules." Sarah stared at her, speechless. She expected anger, denial, maybe even fear. But not this cold confidence. It felt like Karen believed she was untouchable. Protected. In control. Sarah turned away. She walked back down the porch steps slowly, her legs shaking but her heart steady. As she reached the sidewalk, Karen called after her. "And Sarah? Don't try to involve the community. They know I'm right." Sarah didn't look back. She couldn't. Her eyes were filled with tears she refused to let fall. When she reached home, she wiped her face and stood tall. Eli watched her from the window. His small, worried eyes gave her strength. She dialed the police number. And for the first time that day, she felt like she was taking back control. Karen might think rules give her power. But a mother fighting for her child has something stronger. And Sarah was just getting started. Sarah's hands trembled as she held her phone, but her voice stayed steady when the police operator answered. There was something powerful in her tone, like a mother who had reached her breaking point and was done being afraid. Within minutes, a patrol car turned the corner and rolled slowly down Willow Creek. Neighbors peeked out from windows and stood quietly on porches as the police vehicle parked in front of Sarah's house. The calm morning shifted into something heavier, something tense and electric. Everyone knew something big was happening. Officer Ramirez stepped out, followed by Officer Collins. They had serious faces, not the polite smiles they used for small community calls. Sarah greeted them with a quick nod, trying not to break down again. "Ma'am, you reported stolen medical equipment?" Officer Ramirez asked. "Yes," Sarah replied, holding up her phone. I have video proof. Inside the house, the officers followed her to the living room. Eli watched from the couch, eyes wide and worried. Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder gently, then opened the security footage. As she pressed play, the room became completely silent. They watched Karen on the screen, walking slowly, dragging the wheelchair, staring directly into the camera with that cold, confident expression. When the footage ended, Officer Collins leaned forward, replayed the video, and zoomed in on Karen's face. Both officers exchanged a serious look. "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said carefully, "this is clear evidence of theft." A heavy breath escaped Sarah's chest. Finally, someone believed her. Finally, this nightmare was being taken seriously. Eli whispered, "Mom, are they going to get it back?" Sarah squeezed his hand. "Yes, sweetheart. They will." The officers asked a few more questions when the wheelchair was last seen, how long Karen had been sending warning letters, whether any other medical equipment had gone missing. With each answer, the officers' expressions grew more troubled. "This isn't just a rule dispute," Officer Collins said. "This is a pattern." Sarah nodded. "She's been targeting us for months." "Then we need to act fast," Officer Ramirez replied. "Where does this woman live?" Sarah pointed down the street directly at Karen's perfect, spotless home with trimmed bushes and identical flower pots. The walk toward Karen's house. As the officers began walking toward Karen's house, neighbors began to gather. Some whispered. Some pointed. Some followed at a distance, curious but cautious. It felt like the whole community had been holding its breath for months, and now everything was finally coming to the surface. Sarah walked behind the officers, but her steps were slow. Each house she passed felt like another memory of Karen's warnings, her nasty letters, her judgmental stares. And now, walking toward the source of so much stress, Sarah felt her chest tighten. But she didn't stop. The officers reached Karen's driveway and knocked once, firmly. Inside the house, footsteps approached. The door opened. Karen appeared exactly the same as before, calm, confident, almost bored. She looked at the police officers, then at Sarah behind them, and smirked. "Ah. I see someone can't follow simple HOA rules." Officer Collins stepped forward. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you about a reported theft." Karen crossed her arms. "There is no theft. There is only enforcement. I took necessary action according to HOA guidelines." Officer Ramirez gave her a long, steady look. "Ma'am, taking someone else's medical equipment without permission is not enforcement. That is a criminal offense." Karen chuckled. Actually chuckled. "As if the law applies the same to HOA matters," she said. "You officers don't understand how neighborhoods work." The officers didn't argue. They didn't need to. "Ma'am," Collins said calmly, "we're requesting permission to check your property." Karen stepped forward, blocking the doorway. "No. You have no right to enter. This is HOA business, not police business." Sarah watched this with disbelief. How could someone be so confident, so calm, after committing something so cruel? Officer Ramirez said, "Ma'am, we have video proof. If you refuse, we have legal authority to proceed." Karen's smile finally faded a little. But she still refused. "No one is entering without an HOA supervisor present," she snapped. "I am protecting neighborhood standards." Officer Collins radioed something quietly. A moment later, another police car arrived with a community officer who handled legal matters. Karen's confidence flickered. "Ma'am," the new officer said firmly, "step aside." Karen hesitated, then slowly moved out of the way. Inside Karen's property. The officers stepped into the garage first. Neighbors crowded around the driveway, holding their breath. Then, a loud gasp came from inside. Officer Collins called out, "Ma'am, you need to come here." Karen's face drained of color. Sarah moved closer but stayed outside the garage doorway. She didn't need to go inside to know. She felt it in her chest. Then Officer Ramirez emerged from the garage holding something Eli's wheelchair blanket. Sarah recognized it instantly. It was handmade by Eli's grandmother. Inside the garage, under a large tarp, was the stolen wheelchair. But there was more. Much more. The officers lifted another corner of the tarp. There lay Eli's missing portable lift. And the backup oxygen tank Sarah thought she misplaced weeks ago. And a box of medical supplies she had never realized was gone. It wasn't one night of stealing. It wasn't one act of cruelty. Karen had been secretly taking pieces of Eli's life, little by little, like a twisted game of control. Officer Collins turned to Sarah. "Ma'am. I'm so sorry." Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. Not from sadness this time, but from pure relief. Eli's equipment was safe. Everything stolen was found. But Karen's nightmare was only beginning. The investigation had reached a point of no return. And justice was closer than ever. The air in Willow Creek felt thick, heavy, almost electric. Word had spread quickly. Neighbors whispered about Sarah's stolen wheelchair, about Karen's obsession, and about the police now investigating the house at the end of the street. People peeked through windows and stood on porches, uncertain whether they should be horrified, curious, or both. Inside Karen's garage, the officers moved carefully, uncovering each hidden corner. Every tarp lifted and box opened revealed more of the truth. Sarah stood just outside the garage doorway, hands clenched, her heart racing faster than it ever had. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her son's wheelchair was there, safe, and yet, the sight of Karen's hidden stash made her stomach churn. "This is unbelievable," Officer Collins muttered under his breath. Officer Ramirez nodded. "Ma'am, this isn't just one theft. She's been taking your son's equipment piece by piece, and hiding it here." Sarah felt her blood run cold. She remembered the small lift that had gone missing weeks ago, the oxygen tank she thought had been misplaced. Every time she had assumed forgetfulness or accident, it had been deliberate. She whispered to herself, almost unable to say it aloud. She planned this, every step. The officers began cataloging the items: Eli's wheelchair, the lift, the backup oxygen tank, special braces, and even medical supplies that Sarah didn't realize were gone. Each item was carefully stacked, hidden under blankets, tucked behind storage boxes, as if Karen had been collecting trophies. One officer picked up a clipboard lying on top of the boxes. It wasn't a regular HOA clipboard. This one was different. It had notes, dates, times, items, and even small sketches of Sarah's porch and driveway. Officer Collins's voice was low. "This isn't just theft. This is organized, premeditated." Sarah stepped closer, gripping her jacket. She had never imagined a human could be so cruel, so meticulous. She could feel every violation, every warning letter, every glare from Karen in the past months like they were pieces of a puzzle forming a terrifying picture. Then, something even more shocking happened. The officers opened a small locked cabinet in the corner. Inside, neatly labeled, were receipts and documents proving Karen had attempted to claim Eli's medical equipment as HOA property. She had even written down values: $12,000 for the wheelchair, hundreds more for the lift and accessories, trying to justify her theft as community action. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth. She tried to steal them legally, she whispered. Officer Ramirez nodded gravely. She documented everything. She thought she could manipulate the law and the HOA rules to cover her crime. The weight of the situation hit Sarah. Karen had gone far beyond control, beyond obsession. She wasn't just a neighborhood tyrant, she was dangerously calculating. Every item, every move, every note, every step of the theft had been planned in advance. Sarah's mind flashed to Eli, sitting at home, trusting her to protect him. The thought tightened something in her chest. She had to act fast. She couldn't wait for Karen to find another excuse, another way to harm her son. Officer Collins turned to Sarah. "We need to secure this evidence. Do not touch anything. This will go straight into the report for prosecution." Sarah nodded. She could barely speak. Her eyes were fixed on her son's wheelchair. She wanted to run forward, hug it, make sure it was safe, but she also had to stay calm. Then, a voice broke through the tense silence. Karen stepped forward, her face pale now, lips pressed tightly. For the first time, she did not smile. The confident, powerful aura was gone. She had been caught. This is ridiculous, she stammered, trying to sound normal. I did nothing wrong. I was enforcing rules. Officer Ramirez looked at her steadily. Ma'am. This is beyond HOA enforcement. You took medical equipment from a disabled child. You are in serious legal trouble. Karen's eyes darted around the garage, then at the officers, then at Sarah standing outside. Her smirk vanished. For the first time, her carefully controlled world was cracking. You can't do this, she shouted. I am the HOA. You have no right. Officer Collins's hand moved to the radio. Prepare for arrest. Karen froze. Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected this. No one had ever challenged her power like this. The law, real law, wasn't a warning letter or a fine. It didn't bend to her rules. Sarah took a deep breath. She felt a surge of relief, anger, and triumph all at once. For weeks, Karen had terrorized them, threatened them, and now, justice was finally here. The officers began documenting everything: photographs, evidence logs, and personal notes. Every detail mattered. Every hidden item, every document, every step Karen had taken was being recorded. And Sarah realized something else. Karen had underestimated community awareness. Neighbors had watched, whispered, and slowly realized what she was doing. The walls Karen built with rules and intimidation were crumbling. Finally, Officer Ramirez turned to Sarah and said softly, "Everything will be returned, ma'am. And she will face the consequences." Sarah exhaled. She looked at Eli's wheelchair. Her son's lifeline. It had been hidden, stolen, almost lost, but it was here now. Safe. Karen, still standing in the garage, tried one last defense. I was protecting the neighborhood. A neighbor's voice called from the street, "You were hurting a child." It was like a crack of thunder in the room. Karen flinched. For the first time, she was not in control. Sarah's heart pounded. She knew the final act was coming. The arrest. The return of what belonged to her son. The justice that Karen had ignored for so long. The air was electric. The neighborhood was silent. And in that tense moment, everyone knew the next few minutes would change Willow Creek forever. The street outside Karen's house felt unreal, too quiet, too tense. Neighbors lined their porches and lawns, watching the scene unfold as if they were witnessing a storm about to hit. Cars were parked along the curb, and the sunlight glinted off metal police badges. Willow Creek had never seen anything like this. Inside the garage, Karen stood frozen. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it behind crossed arms. Her confident mask, the one she wore so flawlessly at HOA meetings, was slipping. For the first time, she was exposed. Vulnerable. Officer Ramirez stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. Karen Thompson, you are under arrest for theft, harassment, and interfering with medical equipment belonging to a disabled child. Karen's eyes widened. No. This can't happen. I am the HOA. I enforce the rules. The officers didn't flinch. They had seen her confidence crumble already. The evidence, her notes, the wheelchair, the lift, the oxygen tank, and the receipts, was overwhelming. You stole medical equipment from a child. That is a crime, not an HOA matter, Officer Collins said quietly. Step aside and cooperate. Karen's mouth opened, and a long scream erupted, sharp and angry. I am the authority here. You can't take me. This is my neighborhood. She lunged toward the garage door, trying to block the officer's path. Her movements were frantic, desperate. Her glasses slipped slightly down her nose, and her carefully styled hair fell out of place. She looked less like the confident HOA queen and more like a trapped animal. "Step back, ma'am," Officer Ramirez ordered. Karen hesitated, then froze as the officers moved in with trained precision. Handcuffs clicked onto her wrists. She shouted, "You're breaking the rules. You can't do this." The sound of her protests filled the quiet street. Neighbors whispered and gasped. Children peeked from behind curtains. Some of the neighbors, who had endured her constant rules and complaints for years, looked almost gleeful. Others shook their heads in disbelief. "Karen, you're hurting people. You can't do this to a disabled child," one neighbor shouted from across the street. Karen's head snapped in that direction, fury burning in her eyes. I was protecting the community. I'm the HOA. Her voice faltered. For the first time, her words had no power. The officers led her out of the garage and toward the police vehicle. Karen struggled, pulling and twisting, but there was no escape. Every step she took, she shouted, protested, and tried to assert authority, but it meant nothing. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Karen. She didn't say a word, but her expression said it all. Months of fear, frustration, and anger were being replaced with relief. Her son's wheelchair was safe. Her son's independence was restored. And justice, finally, justice was arriving. The police gently but firmly guided Karen into the back of the patrol car. She kept shouting about rules, the HOA, and neighborhood standards, but the officers ignored her. The handcuffs made her movements slower, weaker, less intimidating. From the crowd, a neighbor muttered, finally it's over." Eli, standing with Sarah on the porch of their home, watched the entire scene. He clutched his stuffed dinosaur tightly, his eyes wide but filled with a small, hopeful smile. Sarah knelt beside him and whispered, "It's okay, Eli. Everything's going to be okay now. You're safe." The police carefully secured Karen in the vehicle. One officer read her rights again to make sure everything was official. Karen's face was red with fury, her sunglasses broken in her frantic movements. She realized the world she had built on fear, control, and rules had crumbled in a matter of minutes. The officers closed the car door, and the vehicle started to drive away. Karen's shouting faded as the car turned the corner. Silence fell over Willow Creek. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Neighbors began to murmur quietly among themselves, some nodding to Sarah, others shaking their heads. People whispered about Karen's obsession, her boldness, and her ultimate downfall. It was a story no one would forget. Sarah hugged Eli tightly. "You can have your wheelchair now," she said softly, her voice still trembling. She led him inside, where the equipment had been carefully restored. Eli's eyes lit up as he touched his wheelchair, testing the wheels, the lift, and the braces. A small smile appeared on his face, the first real one in weeks. Inside her home, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. She had faced Karen, confronted her, and survived. But more importantly, she had protected Eli. Every stolen item, every violation, every cruel act had been undone. Outside, the officers began cataloging the scene, taking photos of the garage, and ensuring every piece of stolen equipment was documented. The neighbors slowly returned to their routines, some whispering to each other, some simply standing in quiet shock. The news of Karen's arrest would travel fast, and the story of her obsession and downfall would be retold in the community for years. And in that moment, Sarah realized something important. The rules Karen had tried to manipulate for her own power could never override the truth, never override justice, and never override the love and determination of a mother protecting her child. As the sun began to set over Willow Creek, the neighborhood felt a small, hard-won peace. The storm had passed. Karen had been stopped. And life, slowly but surely, would return to normal. But the memory of those tense, terrifying hours and the woman who had dared to steal from a disabled child would linger in everyone's mind forever. The sun was dipping low over Willow Creek, casting a warm orange glow over the quiet street. For weeks, tension had hung like a storm cloud over the neighborhood. Now, after Karen's shocking arrest and the recovery of Eli's wheelchair, a strange calm settled over the houses. Inside Sarah's home, the atmosphere felt completely different. The wheelchair, carefully polished and ready, stood at the center of the living room. Eli's eyes sparkled as he ran his hands over the controls, testing every button, every lever, every feature he had missed for so long. A small, wide smile spread across his face, one that reached all the way to his eyes. "Mom, it's mine again," he whispered, almost in disbelief. "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah said, hugging him tightly. "It's all yours." She let herself breathe fully for the first time in weeks. Relief mingled with exhaustion. Her body still felt tense, her mind still replaying the nightmare of Karen's obsession and theft. But for Eli, and for herself, the worst was over. The neighborhood reacts. Outside, the quiet of the street was slowly interrupted by soft conversations. Neighbors emerged from their homes, sharing the news of Karen's arrest, expressing relief, disbelief, and a quiet satisfaction. Some of them had lived with Karen's constant rules, her judgmental glances, and her intrusive warnings. Others had watched from a distance, unsure of how far her obsession would go. One neighbor, Lisa, approached Sarah and Eli. "I can't believe she actually took your equipment," she said softly. "I always thought she was strict, but this?" Sarah nodded. She thought rules gave her power. But some things are bigger than rules, like a child's life. People whispered among themselves, realizing how blind many of them had been to Karen's escalating obsession. Her downfall was a wake-up call. It reminded them that power misused, even in small neighborhoods, could hurt real people. And sometimes, courage and truth could restore balance. Karen's fate. Meanwhile, Karen sat in a police vehicle, handcuffed and silent. The confident woman who had walked the neighborhood like a queen, issuing warnings and fines, was gone. Her power had crumbled, her lies and manipulations exposed. At the station, the officers carefully logged every piece of evidence: the stolen wheelchair, the lift, the oxygen tank, the documents, and the receipts. Each item told a story of cruelty, obsession, and the danger of unchecked authority. Karen's claims of protecting the neighborhood held no weight against the facts. She would face charges for theft, harassment, and endangering a disabled child. She would face real consequences this time, and the community could finally move on without fear. Sarah's reflection. Back in her home, Sarah sat on the couch, watching Eli roll around the living room, laughing for the first time in weeks. Her heart swelled with pride and relief. She reflected on the past weeks, the fear, the confrontations, the sleepless nights. She realized something important: courage isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes, courage is standing firm in the face of someone who abuses power. Sometimes, courage is speaking up when the world seems silent. She thought about the community. About neighbors who had watched silently, unsure how to act. And she understood that awareness mattered. Had they acted sooner? Maybe Karen would never have dared to steal. But now, lessons had been learned, lessons about power, justice, and the importance of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. A message to the audience. The narrator's voice softens, almost as if speaking directly to anyone watching this story. When people misuse power, it can feel impossible to fight back. But the truth always finds a way to surface. And sometimes, the courage of one person, the courage to stand, to confront, to fight for what is right, is enough to change everything. Rules are meant to guide, not harm. Authority is a responsibility, not a weapon. And love, care, and justice, these are stronger than control, stronger than fear, stronger than anyone who tries to take what doesn't belong to them. Sarah watched Eli play freely, the wheelchair moving smoothly beneath him. For the first time, she felt peace. Not just because the equipment was safe, but because justice had been served. Because in a world where rules can be twisted, the heart and courage of one person had made a difference. Closing scene. The camera pans outside, over Willow Creek. The street is calm. Children play, neighbors wave at one another, and the sun sets slowly behind the houses. The memory of Karen's obsession lingers in the air, but so does a sense of relief, of hope, and of restored balance. Inside, Sarah hugs Eli one last time before bedtime. "Everything's going to be okay now," she whispers. "You're safe, and no one can take that from you again." Eli nods, smiling, his trust in the world and his mother stronger than ever. The story ends with a lingering thought for the audience. Sometimes, standing up for what's right isn't easy. Sometimes, it feels impossible. But when you protect those who cannot protect themselves, when you fight with truth, courage, and love, you create a world where justice can arrive instantly. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a mix of relief, inspiration, and reflection, a perfect emotional close for a YouTube video.